We welcome all of you to the final part of our episode on helping children acquire literacy skills. In the previous episode, we discussed more about how our model and the learnings from our model is actually being contextualized to meet the needs of each community, and that's how we are helping community members then take an active interest in their own learning and then continue on this path of sustainability. And Muktangan being a demonstration model, the whole effectiveness of it lies in the fact that it can be applied to various settings because of its bottom up approach that again factors in the real needs of the community. What are some of your learnings from the ground in terms of maybe the differences or the similarities that you've observed when it comes to teaching literacy, especially in the light of all these outreach projects that you've spoken about?
Yes, Shruti, as you have rightly said, Muktangan being a demonstration model, the whole effectiveness of it does lie in the fact that it can be applied to various settings. However, having said that, we come across a lot of challenges while taking our literacy models into these rural areas. So, let me share some insights into some of the differences and similarities that we found during the course of our trainings. Speaking of differences, what we have observed is there is a huge disparity between these two areas. So, in most of our outreach programs, the children have limited or no access to even basic learning tools. So, for example, a well-equipped classroom, computers, good experienced faculty, and even the other basic infrastructures. Like certain projects, when we had to go to the rural villages, it was like a shed. There was just a shed, and there would be one teacher. So all these things. Most of the time, these teachers are not qualified enough. They do not turn up due to various reasons, like perhaps less remuneration, which leads to a lack of motivation at their end, resulting in poor quality education. It has also been noticed that it's very difficult to attract and retain qualified teachers in the rural areas. Most of these teachers teach English without having sufficient knowledge of the language. They also find it very challenging to come for trainings as they are conducted in areas far away from their villages. The facilitators or the teachers face different challenges like lack of transport because they come from these very remote areas and they are given additional government duties. Another important thing for them is there is this temporary migration of the students that happen, due to their parents moving for their livelihood, like brick workers, and then we have these construction workers. So during the monsoon, this work doesn't happen. So they are in the villages. As soon as the monsoon is over, the summer starts, and wherever this thing is happening, they move over. So the children are just moving in and out of these villages. So that also has a very impact, which doesn't happen in our urban schools or urban sectors, right? And one another important thing is the student child ratio. That is also a very big concern. Where at times we have observed that in one school there is a teacher who's teaching all grades. So they are having multiple levels, and sometimes there are more than 60 students in a class with maybe just one teacher. Um, when we speak about similarities, I don't think there is much except that teachers face the same challenge when it comes to teaching students coming from the community, whether it is rural or urban. I think this is similar somewhat. And maybe the urban students may stand a slightly better chance because their receptive skills are a notch higher than the rural students, perhaps because they are exposed to, there's a wider exposure to the language thrown around them. Assessments might be one thing where it might be similar in both the sectors, that is one similarity. And another thing would be lack of parental involvement or participation, both ways. Rural may it might be more and urban may less, but that is always happening. Those are some of the similarities which we could see,
Yeah.
which we can see.
But I think one thing that we have seen, all three of us have gone into the rural sector and done our outreach projects, that the enthusiasm of the facilitators whom we are teaching, the teachers, is great.
That never dips.
That doesn't
That's
dip.
a motivating factor for us as trainers. Whenever we have gone into projects, we have seen that is one thing which even
It's amazing.
Yeah.
There was this one girl, she used to bring her baby, a 3-month-old baby,
Yes.
for the entire 2 days of the workshops. And I, keep everyone, all her friends were taking care of the baby while she was participating. But it didn't stop her from bringing her child. It was great to see this.
Yes, you know that zest for learning something. Yes. She never gave up, and that was a very toddler, I think 3 months or
3 month old child. She had gotten to the. She used to bring him to the sessions, and everyone was entertaining him while she was busy with us.
And she would always be focused. It's not
She's
that
great. She's doing great. Yeah, Yogita is doing great.
And he is our most youngest student, perhaps.
Yeah.
And now she sends videos of him speaking in English. Just
okay. So the practices which we discussed with them, even like pedagogy and the way we do things, she sends videos of, see now my child is doing that, so she teaches him also. So that's it's moving
from one person to the other. And I think that when teachers and learning facilitators are so motivated, but these disconnects that all these challenges that you have brought out, disconnects between the teacher and the child and the community, the curriculum and the classroom practices, there are disconnects on so many levels. And I think we really need to ensure that as a system there is change. Every part of the system there needs to be change.
Yeah, and it's all like it's in Muktangan we say work within your circle of influence.
Yes.
Be proactive. There are certain things in the circle of concern which you
cannot change
because of your policies and things. But what we can change, we need to do.
And that's the effectiveness, because it's a highly adaptable kind of model. Because even though there are some challenges that are completely outside the control or of teachers or facilitators, but still within that, how can we then bring these practices and ensure it more effectively? And I think that there is so much onus that we put sometimes on teachers, that teaching is the responsibility of the teacher, and there's so much onus on teachers to then be reflective and implement all the practices properly. But we don't realize that we also, as the community members, we have an equal role to play in helping children acquire literacy skills and in bringing about a change in the system. So recognizing that the community is an equal stakeholder in achieving these educational goals, what is the way forward for us as a community if we really want to achieve the goals that have been envisaged by policies like the Nipun Bharat, especially considering that grades 1, 2 and 3, and 3 being the most important milestone in the policy? What are some of the ways in which we can contribute towards this change?
Shruti, as per the Nipun Bharat guidelines, it is stated that every child necessarily needs to attain foundational numeracy and literacy by the year end of 2026-27. And this mission is set to focus on certain areas, that is, providing access, retaining children in the foundational years of schooling, make sure that they continue with their education, teacher building capacity, development of high quality student teacher resources, learning materials, make sure that is there in all our system, and also tracking the progress of each child in achieving the learning outcomes which have been put out. Now, here I would like to say that Muktangan began its journey in 2003, firmly believing that achieving foundational skills forms the basis of all future learning. Our early learning programs are very, very strong, embedded in very strong practices and philosophies. Most of the guidelines, I feel, which are stated in Nipun Bharat in the policy are already being practiced in our classrooms. Like to name a few, we've spoken about it earlier in part 1, but we really do focus on listening, speaking experiences in our early years. We have a widespread and appropriate use of teacher learning materials in our classroom. A lot of stress is laid on that, displays at the right level, not overcrowding. So that's part of what we do. We surround our children with a print-rich environment. A teacher-student ratio of 1:15, like I said, goes a long way in making sure that there is individual attention given to each child. We have well-equipped libraries, we have library sessions, we have books which the children handle, and we lay a very strong focus on teacher building capacity through our proficiency sessions and ongoing education with them. And also we track the progress of each child with our regular student tracking, which we do on a regular basis. Each child is tracked through certain competencies and indicators through the year. Now, we believe that Muktangan has always been a trendsetter when it comes to introducing, implementing, and integrating various teaching methodologies after reviewing and reflecting on them thoroughly. Um, and so we understand that as a community, we need to go ahead, focus on basic literacy skills, keeping the child as our primary focus, and providing happy classroom experiences for their holistic development. So I think that pretty much sums it up. A happy classroom, holistic development, involving the child in the learning process, proficiency for our teachers. So I think that's what we are doing towards.
And I think for parents also, it is more of an awareness, because a lot of parents don't really understand what to look for, especially at the time of admissions. What is it that you actually need to look for when you're choosing the school, for your child. Um,
Correct.
so this really helps parents also in understanding what is my role or responsibility, um, in to help my child then strengthen their literacy skills, numeracy skills. What should the early years experience be like for the child?
So I think towards that we have our weekly.
Yes, to add to it, when we conduct parents meeting,
PTMs.
so where we demonstrate one of the activities with the parents. So parents are aware what my child is learning in Muktangan. So if you see their feedback after the session, they are very happy.
Very
They give
Yeah,
positive
what
feedback.
certain classroom practices which we do in the classroom, we make the parents do.
Yeah.
So they become the part of their child's journey.
Yes.
And what we learned, I think when we were growing up, it was normally a parents-teacher meeting would only be for your complaints or your academic progress.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unlike that, your Muktangan has got a very different approach.
Experiential.
They generate that
Yeah.
awareness with the parents. I wish that was there earlier during our
When we were
time.
growing up.
When we were
There
growing
was a
up,
Muktangan
yes.
when we were growing up.
We used to dread those days when you knew that the teacher would just go on.
Reports
and on
day.
about
For reports day.
yeah, reports. Here the meetings are such where I think there is this awareness generated, amongst the parents. That is, I think, one of the USP of Muktangan.
And I think this process that has been set up of the parents meeting, which is based on again active constructivism and experiential learning, this is what helped parents during COVID.
Yes.
Because
to take their child
to
along with
take
them.
their child along with them, and because children were at home with their parents, and I think parents were then empowered to help their children at home using the same kind of practices
And
that are there.
parents and children overcame all the challenges of having simple phones. They still logged on to the sessions and part of it, and resource materials were sent. It was great to see how everyone came together to make it work.
And
Right.
during online session, even the parents were involved. As students were at home, parents were attending the session
Yes.
along with their children. That was
Attentively.
attentively. So they used to see what's happening in the classroom.
Absolutely, and I
From the
think
classroom.
through that we are also addressing the literacy needs of the parents.
Yes.
Because many of them would not have had opportunities to develop their English proficiency or literacy
Like
skills.
they say, you educate the woman of the family, you educate the
Entire family.
She
Absolutely.
takes it along.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the 21st century skills is so crucial because
Very crucial.
for acquiring a language, like you said, it's so important that these skills are focused upon, because it's not just understanding the rules of grammar, but how do you actually apply it? And what role does it play in my life on a personal level, in terms of my interaction with people, in terms of my self expression? And I really like this independent writing
Yes.
practice
Yes.
that you spoke about, because I think even when we were growing up, we would get topics.
Topics. Yes. And that I think is it's very very clear. It's like we have say these are non-negotiables of Muktangan. Independent writing is a process which is completely unguided. And initially you see children struggling. They can't believe that they've been told, "Oh, do what you want."
Hmm.
And then slowly as it progresses, they look forward to that session, and you cannot imagine the things they come up with. And even when we do it in our preschool classes, the children it'll be scribbling. All writing begins with scribbling.
Yes.
But when the teacher asks him or her what she has done, she will give a long story about what the scribbles indicate. So to her, it is her story. And by listening to her and giving her respect, you are building her confidence for life.
Yes. Yes.
A child also, even if he's 3 years old, needs to believe that I can also speak and I will be listened to. That's active listening.
Yes.
That's one of our listening, speaking experiences which are important.
And I think this is the partnership in learning where children are also respected for their views.
Yes. It's amazing how, if you allow a child to talk, the insights he'll come with. Sometimes an adults will be like, oh, I didn't think of that. And it's so pure, it's so clear. It's very clean. Very black and white, we get into shades of grey.
Yes.
So it's nice.
And I think there's so much co-learning from what you've shared, learning from children, learning from teachers, learning from the community. And that is what, is so important for us to understand. When you want to really help children acquire a language, this is what we need to focus upon. And what we need is a systems integration, not just one isolated component bringing about a change there, but change should be holistic. We need to bring a systems change.
And we need to understand that just because we are teachers, we are not the primary focus and we are not like the gurus.
Correct.
Everyone works together to achieve something. Each one plays a very important role in bringing that system together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us and helping us understand the importance of literacy in a child's life and ways in which we can further enhance this process and help children acquire the language in primary years. And I think, like all of you have shared, that we need greater integration of systems and processes, and this is the most effective way for us as a learning community if we really want to achieve these educational goals. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.